Hello, everyone. Happy New Year. We hope this finds you well. We are actually recording on 1/20/21, so a big day today and a lot to reflect on. And we wanted to kind of get together and have a conversation over the events of 1/6/21 and kind of just what we witnessed. And I know just from conversations with different community members and youth in the community, it was very impactful, even if you don't necessarily watch the news too much or media. You ultimately had to hear about it, and I know many were impacted. And we wanted to allow the space and the opportunity for people to kind of share their thoughts. And we want any comments or anything else, we'd love to hear that as well. But just kind of validate those things that what we ultimately saw wasn't okay, and it's okay that we feel that way. But also to, as we're the community wellness group, we're also going to reflect on also what we've done for ourselves since the 6th to kind of take care of our mental health, as I know all three of us on in this video were impacted. So we're just going to have a kind of just casual conversation. And again, that's the idea. So I don't know if one of you ladies would like to share kind of your experience or thoughts.
I would say that my experience of the six, it really just seemed like another day in this crazy series of 2020 part two. So it was just that bizarre that this would be happening. It was like no way, but then way because of the demographic and just the audacity and what Trump presidency brought was people's audacity to try other folks. And they thought that they were like villains or something, super villains, and decided to storm the Capitol or whatever. It's really comical at the same time. I bring a lot of levity to all situations because I just feel like a little laughter is needed to balance out just the buffoonery. But it was just really that it was a circus, and it was really just crazy people. I think each and every one of those folks don't have that many marbles because I don't know where you thought you were going, or you just really thought that you had the audacity to do this and you weren't going to get in trouble for it. Stealing podiums and taking pictures in people's offices, like that takes a lot of guts. That's a lot of audacity. Um, I'm really loving the fact that everybody is getting in trouble and getting some kind of punishment for what they. I believe they all deserve to be in prison. Like if they were black, it would have been a different narrative, and that's why black people are upset. Is because if they were black people, each and every one of those people would probably be dead right now. Like they would have went in there and shot everybody up, no questions at all, and then ask questions later. With them, it's all we're gonna wait till they go home, and then we're gonna put out like ABP or whatever, and then we're gonna collect everybody after everything is done. No, black people won't even left out of there alive. So that's why we're upset, and that's why it's frustrating.
Yeah. Agreed, definitely. So I'm so glad to share in this space with you both. I've seen some footage of the work that you've done before, and I'm grateful for the mental wellness that you're bringing to our community and the voice that you're representing. Not that you are like the voice of the entire community or population, but the how you get to speak to topics that will reach the youth and are important to our and I don't want to say older people, our finer wine type people, right? I usually tell my children, oh, you're getting older, I'm just getting finer like wine, that's it. So I'm a mother of four. I have a son who's in the Army, which it shook me up like heck to know that my son at any moment could be deployed and put on some front lines of someone who was making bad decisions and choosing to put our state at risk. So every time that showed up, I was like, oh my goodness. And the reason my son chose to be in the Army is because of how the system has been set up so far, anyhow. Not because he was like, oh, I'm going to grow up and be in the Army. No, it was like, this is the better idea to create some sustainability for my own life growing up. So it always frustrates me to know when our state is in a dangerous space and that my son is put his life in their hands. I have a 20-year-old and an 18-year-old who are always trying to keep me update with lit things, right? So that's why I get to enjoy this space with you all, because I'm learning, I guess, how to be lit. And then I have a 10-year-old who is the epitome of being spiritually connected to humans and the earth. And when I combined all of their life experiences and how they began to call me, because I chose to not watch the television, I chose to not put myself in a place where I'm like, everybody's everywhere in every meeting, like giving me updates. Oh, did you see this? Oh, did you hear that? And I'm like, I don't want to see it. I don't want to hear it. But then my son comes down the stairs and he's like, Mom, what's happening to our world? And I was like, oh no. If it's got to the 10-year-old who is safer at home practicing, he doesn't have a television in his room. Like, so however the content got down to him, and he felt fearful while being in our home in South LA, and felt like he was losing hope in what is possible for United States. I was like, okay, we got to do something. So I paused and we went into meditation together. And that is something that would have not been done, I would say, several years ago. Meditation was not a practice. It was not something that, I grew up in the Christian church and nobody was like, go and meditate. No one was like, go get centered.
I was meditating this morning. So yes.
Mhm.
But yeah, I'm oh hi. I'm seeing the need for people to connect to something that matters to them in times like this. Because stuff is, like she said, I don't know where the marbles went, but when you have put yourself in a position when you don't have fear, in a sense of, just to relate back to like the Watts riots, when the people were upset and this anger led them to want to make a demonstration for others to understand we are very upset with what has happened here and we need people to know. Yeah, and still there's a whole nother level of audacity that allows for you to go to the Capitol and ruin that space.
Yeah.
I don't know.
No, I'll echo that because that is the part that I think got me the most. Is I wouldn't have ever imagined being able to step foot on the grass of the Capitol building before being shot. And that's just a perception I've had.
There was a story, I forgot the name of the woman who was shot dead in her car while her child was in the back seat for just driving in that direction and getting too close to the building, not actually being on foot at the Capitol building. She was a black woman. This happened like in 2018 or something. I forgot her name. I apologize. That would have been a really great example of how like the contrast is there. Like she was in her vehicle still. She wasn't she didn't have no flag. She wasn't marching up those stairs to knock down any doors. She was in her vehicle with her baby and she was shot like several times for being too close to where these people were.
I mean, just this summer, the National Guard was called to support clearing a street near the Capitol. So that's where it was just really tear gas and all of that was available and ready to be used when people of color were on the street advocating for Black lives. That was a terror for America to prepare for. But people actually saying they're going in to make people pay for stealing an election that has been disproven on a white was just mind blowing to me. And the fact they got in, I think, was the indication of where it just reflected on me is I wouldn't have made it on the grass. Like,
Yeah,
or Black Lives Matter wouldn't have even have made it towards the gate.
not at all. And I just think that Trump, what he said beforehand definitely gave them the green light to be like, well, let's do, because this is the president of the United States and he's letting you know that it's what's up. Go ahead and do what you need to do to cause conflict and combat the fact that I'm getting up out of here. So they were ready. They had the audacity, but also the green light from the president of the United States. Thank God that that is not going to be the case anymore. But what happens afterwards will definitely be a reflection. Like we as the United States has to redeem ourselves. Now that this man isn't president anymore, now that nobody is fearful, because I feel like everybody for the last 4 years have just been living in fear of this orange man. And I'm just like, y'all couldn't come together and do nothing out of 4 years, like nobody, like y'all all scared. So now that he doesn't have this ranking, like what are you guys gonna do? You guys have to lock him up and throw away the key at this point.
Yeah, I mean, there's yes, so much that ultimately, but I agree with you with now where I feel like the last 4 years, and I'll speak for myself, have been trying to progress, but oftentimes feeling like I need to pause just to survive for my sake of just what needing to see. And I actually, on that day, I woke up and I saw just the beginning and I actually stopped watching for the rest of the day because it was just too much. And I actually took a while to actually be informed and look into it. I made the mistake. Well, no, we'll go into that. But I've looked a lot, and because they took video of themselves, and there's video now, many of them are recorded saying, "We're here by order of Trump," and they were telling the security that we have orders from your boss, so let us through. So yes, it's going to be very hard for anyone to argue that that wasn't an incentive for them when there's documented evidence that those people were saying it themselves. So
Yeah. And that's the craziness again, right? When we look at why there's been demonstrations of having to say Black Lives Matter is because of lives being lost. When this corruption has shown up just simply because of someone saying, well, toot my horn, let me get my ego washed up a bit and say, I need you guys to act a fool because I'm no longer able to be the president and I don't know how to accept it. So I need you to get up and like make a fuss and let it be known to the entire world that this is not okay. And there was funding behind it. There was something that I read that there was supports of buses of people to make it down there. Like there was funding that
Really?
supported buses of people to make it down there. Now I know every time I've been down to the Capitol, I had to go through a security clearance and get a sticker. So I'm trying to wonder, like,
how they get that far in the first place. That point, I didn't even realize that. Like, I've never been to the Capitol. Like, I've been to DC. I saw it from afar, but I never went to the actual Capitol to get all that. And that's a really great point. Like, how'd you get that far in the first place to where you are able to even infiltrate the structure? Like, that's suspect as hell.
yep,
There were social media pages on the event. So that's why the idea that people didn't know, it was like they were all saying it on, their social media platforms that this is what they were going to do. It's just
Really, they were all saying this publicly on social media that they were going.
that's where, as you go into kind of the audacity, there was no sense of consequence for these people anywhere. That's what I'm saying. They were advertising it completely, and that's why they were even taking pictures, because they ultimately planned.
Right, like, you about to get on the bus? I see you. Which row you about to sit on? Like, no.
It was group driven. Yeah, it was. And yeah, and that's part of the reason why there's been huge social media blockage, is because if anybody is actually talking about things like that now, they're taking them seriously and cutting them off versus allowing them to spread and get organized. Because that's ultimately the thing, is they were organized. Like, they organized themselves.
No bots caught them.
Huh?
That's really crazy. That you about to go raid the capital of the United States, and no bots or nobody caught wind of that. Like, that's
under radar.
That's crazy to me.
So it just kind of ultimately showed that they didn't think those people were capable of it. Whoever those people they identified as, that they weren't going to do it. But it just you literally compare it to just this summer of people peacefully protesting for the right to live.
That's it.
And they were met with violence.
Literally, peacefully protesting, minding their business in public versus you rolling up on a government building and rioting. Like, no one, did anyone die? Like, as far as the protesters? Like, one person died, right? Like, a lady?
There was 5 people
5 people?
total.
Okay.
I know one security guard was hit with, I believe it's fire extinguisher. Ended up dying in time. One of the rioters was shot.
Mm-hmm.
But even in that sense, and I wanted to make sure to call her a rioter because of just the different light of how they paint Black Lives Matters activists and anybody who gets involved with the police who's of color versus how they are treating these people who literally are traitors and try to a coup. They literally try to coup in the government. But we're now trying to, as a nation, a lot of the conversation is about healing and recognizing. And I'm involved in education, so I see a lot of things about education and what's being discussed. And one of the conversations that I heard is being discussed is that reflecting on our founding fathers as slave owners makes some Americans feel uncomfortable.
They should.
Yes. And it's also ignoring the fact that the people who were actually slaves, let's ignore what they had to go through. Like, we've asked them, okay, yeah, slavery was so long ago, get over it, it's over. But discussing founding fathers owning slaves, well, we need to be careful of their feeling. It's just, but this is on an educational level. And this is where some of my kids have asked me in this week after, how does something like this happen? How? And that's where it's just the challenge of, it's just so much. Where do you start? And that's where it's, for me, really in working with children, helping them learn how to think versus what to think. Because very much if they get used to, even when I was teaching, my classroom had a rule. If I ever tell you to do something that you disagree with, please stop and ask me, because there will never be anything I will ask of you that I do not believe in. So I will explain to you why I do what I do if you have any questions. And that was always an open policy. And it was that idea that also too, and this was in the conversation with some of my kids, they realize how many mistakes we make as adults. And I think that that has been kind of shocking and impactful to me, because it I feel bad as an adult. But
Make so many mistakes as an adult. Like my birthday is like in 7 days, and
oh,
I'll
you're
be
younger than
like
me too.
29, but I'm like almost 30. Like almost. And I still make a lot of mistakes. I'm like, girl, I thought that by the time we got to this age that we would be wiser and stronger. But every day.
I mean, you are,
No,
but
you're just more used to making mistakes. That's all.
Basically, that's what that means. Like I thought that once I got here, I'll be like, a little bit more like smarter, but I still make a lot of mistakes. So,
mistakes just
yeah.
get bigger and more impactful.
Yeah, basically more steaks, more steaks.
It makes me think about my little one when we were going ice skating. Very first time, this little fella's like, I don't need no help. And then at the end, he's like, Mom, I learned how to fall so well. And I was like, yes, you did. So if anything, you'll make more mistakes and you'll learn how to fall and get up.
I
Yes,
actually
I
like,
love that.
yeah, I like skateboarding, and one of the first things I had to learn was how to fall, because it was just going to happen. So I at least better do it so that I'm not breaking bones when I fall. And it is for me a reflection of life, because same thing on the skateboard. If I don't take it I can have fun on it and enjoy it, but if I don't take it seriously enough, it'll hurt me. Like one little rock, if I'm not paying attention, just a swivel, boom, I could really, and if I don't know how to handle those falls, they can take me out for longer than I really want. And a lot of that, as we're, discussing about wellness, different things, like I actually took a break from media for a bit until about the weekend. Um, I don't know how it came up, but I did look at some of the right wing media. I was trying to understand. I need to understand things, and I was just trying to understand. So I would look at it a little bit, but I was generally avoiding uh, the news and things like that. But what I came across was actually a picture of the Little Rock Nine. Um, so a young Black woman walking with young white women behind her yelling at her, um, and just going to school, and looking back and seeing the time, it was about 63 years ago. That's not long. That's not long at all. And in my wellness, and this is what I did take I did take, like I said, I think it happened on a Wednesday, so I took until about Saturday or Sunday to kind of reflect. But on Saturday or Sunday, I came across that image, and it did serve as a motivation. One, because for me, everything I do is for kids. They're the ones who are going to inherit the society once I'm done with my part in it. So for me, I feel like I need to do what I can to leave them with at least stuff to make their world what they want it to be, whatever that may be. Um, but also, and I did want to really reflect and touch on this, of going really deep into the concept of how our society favors, and realizing that I didn't want to be silent anymore because I had that privilege. And I state that as a male who's more light skinned. I've never been identified as white, but colorism does exist, and male privilege is huge. And I was sitting there and looking at the image of the Little Rock Nine, where this woman couldn't hide. Black women can't hide in our society. Like I was able to sit on my couch that day and I could choose to kind of not engage in this conversation if I didn't want to, because no one was ultimately going to throw it in my face, really. And then I see our vice president now. There's no hiding from what she's had to go through. Like there's never been any hiding in her life. There's no hiding now. And she's going to be in public eye, where it was just kind of a reflection of how much Black women have carried our society without recognition, and how within just such a short time, and really reflecting on that of, now I need to do more of my part, especially as a male in society who is given more privileges and other opportunities and is seeing differently. And really, you understanding what space I take up in that. And I know that was honestly part of my wellness. I wrote a huge Facebook thing on it too, but it really was part of what got me reflection, is just the image of youth, and also the fact that they can't hide from this. They're inheriting this. And that's why very much I have conversations with my kids. And when I talk about my kids, I'm no longer a teacher, but I work with families and specifically the students, and meet with them weekly. And I know most of them, for their mental health, are taking it light on media through 2020, but
Good.
all of them knew of what happened. So it was just that concept of, there is no escaping this. I need to know more so I can explain when they ask me, how did something like this happen? And I had no answer.
Well, I want to acknowledge and applaud you for creating the space for them to be thinkers and to be free, radical thinkers. I usually work with people with lived experience of trauma that has been the residual impacts of homelessness or violence or incarceration. And not many of us have been given the space to radically think with the acceptance of our radical thinking. Usually it's like, I know what's best for you. I know what you need to do. Here's the plan. So I first want to applaud you for that. And one thing MLK talks about in the purpose of education is that it's to build on the intelligence. So it's the personalized intelligence and the character. So I see it very valuable to create that space of, let's maximize on what you think about this thing. Let me encourage you to sit with what's true, right? And I'm usually always trying to really figure out, like, how do we really know the truth? Just like how you said, if we paint the picture with saying America was founded on slave owners, right? This slave ownership, and then it's like, oh, I'm appalled. I don't want to hear such things. But then we think about how we want to say that people are still living with the impacts of slavery. And it's like, oh, get over it. But it's, again, like the truth, right? When we sit with the truth, I think being able to connect intuitively is something that has not been nurtured, so that people are very in tune with what is true. And then when people have been impacted by so much trauma, they're more connected to what their trauma filters out as true than having that spiritual, intuitive connection, like, oh, this is true. So I don't know where Trump got his training to be able to paint these pictures of things and just say stuff.
It was a lack of training. That was a big issue with a lot of things.
I think it takes a lot for somebody to numb themselves to not feel the impact of what is really like. millions of people are dying, and the impacts are so real. And like, what is it that you have gone through to numb yourself, to not feel it, to not speak to the truth of what is going on, and for you to stay in your box and
Yeah.
to
Unfortunately, he's used to that, and that's he grew up very privileged and had money early on in his life, so he doesn't know the struggle, so he doesn't care. And I feel like I read somewhere or saw somewhere that people who struggle more question things more often. You know, I feel like questioning things are is the best form of self love. You can't just go with 100% of what anyone tells you. You have to be able to question and form your own opinion. And people who are struggling, they tend to question things more often. And Trump and people like him, they don't do that often. So in America, they go for whatever they want. Like, oh, that makes sense. Why should I question it? That makes absolute sense. He's right. Like, and he's saying it to the world and not being afraid. And it's like, no, sir, like you should question that this man is over here grabbing people by the, you know, like any of that, like anything, just have two brain cells. Don't have like some people don't think for themselves because they're so privileged. And in America, we live amongst a lot of privileged people, apparently, who feel like they have the audacity.
Yeah, and I think that highlights, um, and I know even one of my students said it themselves. It wasn't me, but they said the images from 1621 were the perfect images of white privilege, um, because and the fact that I do want to acknowledge because I've been all over now looking into. So that's why after I was inspired by Black women on the weekend, I have been looking into more of the media, um, and informed. But there are people of color amongst them, just significantly less. Like it's a very and I think like what you speak of is that is privilege. It's perfectly because a lot of these people of color who are in support oftentimes seem to be of privilege, and don't seem to be are able to ignore the reality, where as you mentioned people who are struggling cannot ignore reality because it's in your face all the time. And so with that too, I'd really love to hear how both of you have really done to help yourselves in this last week and coming to this point on the 20th where we are now welcoming a new administration and our first woman vice president. So I
Black
definitely
woman.
Black woman, yes. Asian Jewish lot versus multi.
And I love the fact that she's mixed cultured because America is a mixing pot, and often as a Black woman, I feel a little guilty that it's only Black and white matters being
Mm.
discussed when there's so other many minorities. So this will just bring light to other cultures that she's Black, but she's also these things too, and not just like white, so we can ignore that part, but like other minorities. She's another minority in America, and there's so many minorities in America that live the American experience out of side of black and white issues, but that's all we hear about is black and white issues. And so I just love that she's Black and also something else which also represents other minorities in America.
Definitely an American representation.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think even reflecting on what is it like, what do I have around me? What do I have inside of me? Um, how do I utilize that? How do I leverage it? One thing I've practiced is getting into this, just appreciating the people who are around me. My son, he told me, he was like, sometimes it's annoying. You come into my room, you're like bringing the sunshine, and I'm like, just let me go back to sleep. And I'm like, no, good morning. I love you. But that has helped me so much because I come from the background of having to be in a mental institution because of my mental state. And so I have to put practices into place where prior to today, I used to be upset when I sat across from my therapist and I'm like, why do I got to go through all this ritual, all this routine just for me to go outside and participate in the day while other people are just able to
Mm.
wake up, put their clothes on, and be like, boom, I'm in the day. And then I got to go and at the end of the day, like go through a whole routine just to be able to fall asleep at night. And now today I say, I get to. I'm privileged to get to have these practices, these routines, because once the safer at home stuff happened, and I was looking like, we really in here. Like, me with other people, but and it's best that we stay in here and like deal with each other's characters and personalities and even sit with my own. How do I how do I be okay all the time? Like, whoo. So
Yeah, your
yeah.
own kids. Like who
Man,
are
I
you?
start praying for everybody. I was like, woo, I hope their kids don't start getting abused, parents could get that'd be that moment. I'm like checking on them, like, hey kids, are y'all okay? Go and do some of this, do some of that, give your mom some space.
Yeah.
Because it's important to be in tune with what we have inside of us. I tell my 10-year-old the thing that someone can never take away from you is your breath. And so if you're bored or if you're just like don't know what to do, just focus on your breath. Like I can't put you
Yes.
on punishment and be like, give me your breath. But I'll do that to the telephone or to the device.
That's amazing. That's great. I wish my mom had like told me things like that or was in tune with yoga or meditation. That's something I would actually echo as a, like referring to over this last week is just being in tune with your breath, but also just continuing on. Like what I know about Black people is that we are super resilient, and this is just something else that has happened in our like history in America, just like, oh yeah, just people storming the Capitol and not getting like nobody's dead really like that. So yeah, that's the simple. That's something that would happen. Yeah, they're selling podiums on eBay, sure, and like they were able to load that up in a car and take that away, and yeah, that's why not, you know? So it's not as ridiculous as the ridiculous things that we hear about happening to us. So I'd rather the ridiculousness happen on that side versus the ridiculousness that happens to us every day when it comes to violence and brutality. So we're used to it and we're resilient. And I wish we weren't used to it, but that's just been the relationship that we've had with America. And so over the last week, I've just taken it as just another event that's unfolded. 2020 was an event all of in itself, and I just thought of it as part two. I'm like, I guess January is part two of 2020. That's what that is, you know? Okay.
It's like continuation, 13 year, 13-month year. Um, no, definitely, and I do want to start getting us wrapped up, but I think we've discussed a lot of great things, especially in reflecting on America, especially how we're discussing of acknowledging our founding fathers being slave owners, because without that acknowledgement and that understanding, it's hard to grow if we don't, learn from our mistakes and our falls, and just try to
Yeah.
like, um,
And I just want to highlight one thing because I don't want to like leave on a negative note. Like I do want to highlight one self-care practice that people should do to combat this event that just happened. And for me, honestly, truthfully, it's just to keep going, to keep moving and staying active. When you are stagnant, when you let things just get to you and ruminate in your mind, that's when you become immobile, and that's when your body shuts down. That's when your mind takes a hold of you in the worst way, and you create the reality. So they do this so that we can feel some type of way. And the best thing that you can do to not feel no type of way because of the bullshit is to live your life and to keep thriving. Honestly, what it is. So that's what I've been doing the past week is trying to continue on. I've had other things that happened outside of people storming the Capitol. So I'm like, what? But at the same time, I'm like, I'm going to continue on. I'm going to be happy because that's what they don't want us. They want us to be miserable. They want us to be in fear. They want us to feel uncomfortable. And no, I'm blessed. So why would I feel uncomfortable? Why would I be mad? And we have a new president. So yes. And y'all didn't win. All that extraness and y'all everybody about to go to jail. Well, everybody moves on with their lives. So what did you like? That's fine. I don't care. Not like that, but they're all literally everyone is about to have like some kind of repercussion at the end of the day. Like everybody's on camera. So even though Trump told you all to do this, it's not like he was gonna pardon y'all too. So everybody else going to jail that did all that. I'm here for it. I'm here for that part. That's hilarious. Like I said, I find the levity in everything. So I'm always gonna laugh and just be like, okay, what's going
And
on?
that was a huge reason why we kind of wanted to have this podcast, is because in talking to different community members, there was such a wide range of emotion, and we want to communicate from like our team, feel the way you feel, like that's okay, like it's okay to not be okay right now. There's a lot. What I always tell my kids is, because I tell them I work for them and my priority is their health, happiness, then education. So those are the three things. But first, their health, and then their happiness, then we can get to the education. So even in now as an adult, I first had to take care of my health, then I had to pick up my mood, then I was able to learn about, more about American history and motivate myself.
That's a good game plan. I like that.
Yeah.
Been working for me now, and that's why also having gone through 15 years of my life were in severe clinical depression, and also I have general anxiety and ADHD, and we could just keep going.
Well, we lived within the system. How could we not, right?
Yeah. So, and I think it's really great that we have this opportunity to talk and share and create this open space so that those who don't feel comfortable having this conversation yet can maybe listen and have that conversation with someone that they're close to, because keeping all that inside can be very painful on you. So we definitely are here mostly to advocate for your health, and that really does mean emotional and mental health as well.
And happiness
Yes.
and education.
In education, yes.
Yeah, I the piece of having someone that you are trusting with whatever you share, it's an honor and a privilege to have that. And that's one thing that I can take away from all of this is that I've gotten a much more closer relationship, which I didn't think you could get closer with how things have been with my children, but we've gotten a lot closer. And I think that um, people of color have grown a lot closer because of the things that have happened. And I think that we'll continue to grow a lot closer. And that is exactly what is needed for us to be able to sustain and transform the American dream into an American dream that works for everybody.
Yeah. That's a beautiful thing about challenges is that they can have really impactful solutions and really meaningful solutions and things that you would have never gotten to if you hadn't had that challenge in the first place. And I've had a lot of challenges. So, and I'm appreciative of all of the things that I get to to conquer and learn about myself and discover about myself because of the challenge that I've ever gone through. So we all have them, and I'm really grateful for this and being able to have this conversation with you guys about what happened on the 6th. This conversation is really important. Like you said, Adrian, you have to be able, you need the outlet to talk it out with folks. It really does make a difference.
Agreed.
Yes, thank you to both of you. Thank you for anybody who watched the whole podcast and is here to the end. Again, any comments, anything, please reach out. We know that's difficult to do. You can also message us directly. We do check that. So if you want to say something that you don't feel comfortable saying publicly, we're here. We're really about the idea of wellness for the community. So thank you all, and we hope you have a great rest of your day.
Yes, thank you. Bye, everybody.